Hello and welcome to Romantasy Readers Podcast. I'm here with Nicole as always, and I'm Allie. How are you doing today, Nicole?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, we're recording at a bit of a different time.
Mhm.
So for once I haven't been working all day. So I don't know if that means I'll have more thoughts or maybe my brain won't be as going as much, but it's exciting to change it up, record things at different times.
Exactly, I know, on the weekend when you're, like, chilling more and you're not, like, just trying to come down from work, and I mean, it's always my days off when I film, but yeah, it's like a Sunday arvo. It's like, it's nice.
Yeah.
Gonna have some interesting, gonna have an interesting beverage very soon, so
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I can
Well,
al
we have a
I can already
very
smell it. It's right here and I can smell it.
we have a very exciting episode for listeners.
We do.
As you may know, or you may not, prior to House of Flame and Shadow coming out, Nicole and I had a bet. And the stakes of that bet were that one of us, whoever lost the bet, was going to have to take a shot and read 2 chapters from the most boring book on the planet, which I believe we determined was Stephen Hawking's, what's the title of the book? I can't remember. It's so
A
boring, I can't
moment a
remember.
moment in time.
Yeah,
I mean, my
yeah.
husband
So
claims that it's actually a very interesting book, but I'm like, "No, it's not. No, it's not. Not for romantasy readers. That is
not
not
for a
an interesting
romantic
book."
reader. There will be no spice in those chapters.
It's gonna be like maths equations and stuff. It's gonna be awful.
Maybe you'll just read it so fast because it'll just be like 2 plus 2 equals 4 equals 7 plus minus negative a million infinity.
Yeah, yep, determines the purpose of the universe and the black holes
And
and
it'll just be
whatever
really
else.
fast. It'll just wash over you and you'll just be like, "Okay, that went faster than I
It's
thought it
just
was
gonna
going
put me to
to."
sleep. That's the truth. I'm probably gonna, like I'm gonna read, like, 2 sentences, and I'm gonna be like, "I'm tired. I'm going to
Well,
sleep
it'll help
now."
you get to bed the next,
Mhm.
maybe it'll take you like 6 months to do it, and then
I don't
you read 2
Hey,
sentences a night for 6
we
months.
didn't specify how long you had. We didn't say you had to read it in one session, did
That's
we?
true. We
So
did not.
2 paragraphs a night, done. Awesome. Great.
And as romantasy readers, we are very familiar with bargains. You have to be you have to be very specific in your bargains and in your
We do.
bets. So I think this is fair game.
Yep.
So Nicole is going to take a shot today. We'll talk a little bit about that. But before we dive into that, what have you been reading this week, Nicole?
Well, I finally got back into the Caraval series, and I'm reading the
Oh,
last book
good.
finale. So I had to put this aside when I was running out of time, and I had to get back into Sarah J. Maas world to read, Crescent City 2, Court of Silver Flame. I was reading all those. I had to leave it, and it was so painful. But then I'd left it for so long that I'd sort of semi forgotten about it. And I've
Yeah.
just been hearing so much about this new book that's coming out. Blackbird, Butcher and Blackbird.
I've seen that all over Instagram.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing it everywhere. So I've got my copy of that, and I actually asked my Instagram, what should I read first? And everyone said finale, and I was like, okay. I mean, I know I should. I just was getting a bit excited. Anyway, but I'm not far off finishing. And look, I mean, it's awesome. I love it. I love everything that she does. It's so good.
Yeah, I really liked that series. I mean, it is YA, so like I wish there was a little bit more spice, but it's still really
Yeah.
good.
She always she hints at it, like, are we going to
Yeah.
consummate our marriage or whatever, but then it never goes anywhere, and I'm just disappointed because 'cause I'm just
Yeah.
like, "Okay, come on, let's move to the adult Stephanie Garber, like, let's get into that adult territory. I want some Jax and all his glory, you know?"
Yes. Ugh, I would love, like, an adult Jax book. That would be
Oh,
so great.
can she just
I
do the
don't know if
next
we'll ever
one?
get it, but it would be great.
No. Anyway, yeah, yeah, but it's still a
Yeah.
great read. I really love it.
Mhm, mhm.
How about you?
I have been reading, I've been kind of in, like, arc hell. I've had a lot of arcs to read, a lot of books to read. I've read some really great books. That's not to say that they're not great. And a lot of them have been non-romantasy, so it's kind of been a nice little palate cleanser for me.
Mhm,
Though
mhm.
I do feel like after reading House of Flame and Shadow, which really had no spice, and then reading like a historical fiction book for my book club, and then reading 2 arcs that didn't have spice, I was like dying for, a steamy, smutty book,
Oh,
and I
yes.
finally got one.
Oh,
So,
thank
and
God.
it is an arc. But this is a series that you should add to your list. Everyone should add it to their list. It's really good. It's the second book in a series. So the first book is called The Road of Bones. And I've
Mhm.
talked about it on the podcast. It's that one where there were like two potential love interests. One was blonde and one was brunette.
Oh, no.
And I was like, she's so not gonna end up with the blonde, you know? um, so anyway, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the second book, Kingdom of Claw, comes out in just a couple of days. It will be, by the time this podcast comes out, it will be out. But it's by Demi Winters, and
Yeah.
it's really good. The second book had some good spice. The
Ooh, I was
spice
gonna
in
say,
the
how
second
good was
book.
the spice? How
Yeah, yeah.
spicy was the spice?
I would say like definitely like ACOTAR series level. You know what I mean? So not like more than Throne of Glass, more than what we really get in Crescent City books. Not like Silver Flames level, but
But
you
nice,
know,
like, just a nice. I mean,
nice.
yeah, you've been
That, as
starved.
we like to say, the Goldilocks level of spice.
Mhm, mhm, and you've been starved of the spice now for a while,
I've
so
been
you
starved.
really
Yeah,
need
I really
something
needed it.
to
And it's like a really slow burn, and like I really just I love a slow burn, and then like they get together and you're like, "Yes, finally." So, anyways,
Love
that's
it.
what I've been reading.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. I think it's officially time to take the shot and to action on this bet. So, listeners, the bet was that Bryce and Azriel were going to become mates in a House of Flame and Shadow. That did not happen. That did not happen in House of Flame and Shadow, which, as we know, the terms of a bargain are very important. Um, However, since we made that bet, Nicole has since turned me into a Brazzerill fan. Like, I am convinced, even though Nicole has to take the shot, I am convinced that she was
Alright,
actually right.
alright. I'm gonna outline a few things here, right? Firstly, I
Okay,
don't think I
please do.
specified it was Crescent City 3. I actually never I mean, okay, look, first of all, I actually did think it was a pretty crackpot theory initially, right? I saw it on not Pinterest, I saw it on TikTok and I was like, "Oh, this is
Yeah,
crazy. This will be really fun. I'm gonna lose, but whatever." Then we got that part 1 and there was
yeah,
a lot of chemistry going around and my brain started to I mean, I was obviously already sort of in this zone and then I saw it and I kind of went, "Whoa." And but look, I mean, even if it was ever going to happen, there was no way it was going to happen in this book, right? Like, it would
no,
take 2 or 3. I mean, we've got a very solid relationship right now between Bryce and Hunt. Like, it was not going to happen. It would merely be seeds being sown for future, which may not have happened as much as I might have liked, but I'm holding on to hope. I'm going to do this like Nesta going into the into the cauldron. I'm going to point my finger and say, "This is not over. This is not over." If if this ends up happening, if they end up being mates and they end up together, I think that's another big thing because there's a lot of theories that maybe they are mates, but they're
but
not
they
going to
don't
end
choose
up
each other.
choosing each
Yeah,
other. If they end up together, you have to do double.
2 shots.
Two shots, 4 chapters of Stephen Hawking. You,
I think that's a very, very fair bargain considering where we are and considering how on board I now am with Bryce and Azrael. I am not sure that they'll end up together actually. So I do think the bet is still kind of on like big picture. I
mhm.
do think I do think they'll be mates. I'm not sure if they'll end up together. So I feel like this is a very fair bet and a very
There is
fair,
definitely a chance it could go
yeah.
either way.
I love that
Yeah.
you're just like, "I'm pointing at you." I
Like
felt it,
king of
the
Highburn,
best
I'm
support.
Nesta, and I'm like, "This is not over. This is not over." You know what though? I mean, and this is like, if it ends up happening, I'm gonna be so excited. I will color my hair Bryce red if they end up together. Like, I no seriously,
Whoa!
like I will put it out there. Like, 'cause I will be so on that If that ends up happening, I will be so far on that Bridesville train. Like, I'll be up the front with the conductor. I will be singing their praises. Like, that would just be to like this is the most underground theory ever, and most people that are into
Yeah,
this, like, they are smart people, guys. They're not these kooky people that are listening to their crystals or something. These are people studying their MBAs. These are people that are like researching Greek mythology, Sailor Moon, like there's a lot
Mhm.
here. Like they are picking up every little sentence and saying this relates to, like, if you go back to ACOTAR and you see this sentence, it's the same kind of sentence, and et
Yep,
cetera, et cetera. There's a
yep.
lot here. There is a lot of evidence that it's not just a kooky theory. But where Sarah J. Maas will take it, who knows? Because it's all in her head right now, and she might, who knows what she's planning from here. But if it ends up going off, I'm totally coloring my hair Bryce red.
Love that idea. I cannot commit because I do think it would be a little bit harder for me to go from brunette, pretty dark brunette to red. Might be a little bit easier for you as a blonde, but
I
I love it.
I used to be red. Like I used to go red from time to time. I haven't done it
Nice.
though in like 10 years. So it's not like this huge thing for me. I'm just like, oh, I haven't
Yeah,
been red in a
yeah,
while. That'd be really fun. Like,
yeah.
but I'd have to
I
like
mean, this could
Bryce.
also be in like 10 years. We might not find out for a decade. So
I know. I'll have my
we'll be in like
wrinkles
our
and I'll have
50s
my
and
red
60s being like,
luscious locks.
yeah, it's time for that bet. Take your 2 shots.
Get out my walking frame, the kind of years we're waiting for Sarah J. Maas to get to
Yeah.
the end of these books.
I know. Somebody made a really funny joke on an Instagram video that I posted, just talking about what I think is next for the series and kind of like the next books. And they were like, well, either way, like it might be a while before we get the next book and like know all this stuff, but it's definitely going to be sooner than we get the next Game of Thrones book. And I was like, that's probably true.
Yeah, I know. It's really hurting me now because I really feel like I'm seeing some Easter eggs for what the next book's going to be. But the reality is, we're probably looking at 2 years. I would love to say it'd be next Christmas, but that would be wishful thinking.
I
Um,
know.
we know Sarah J. Maas was drafting the next one at the time she did that interview where she claimed that Bryce and Hunt were mates. So, well, how long ago was that? Was that like 6 months, 12 months ago? So I'm like, surely she's
Yeah,
got to be
and
like
we
a
know that she
final
said she was
draft.
drafting ACOTAR kind of when she was doing press for House of Flame and Shadow.
Mm.
But it's not like who knows where it is in the drafting process, right? Like she could say she's drafting, but she's actually in the editing mode, or she could still very well be writing portions of the book. It's hard to say.
I would always see, for me, if I was an author, I would think I would always undersell. Like I'd be like, oh,
I
I'm
think you
actually in
have
my
to.
final draft. I'd be like, oh, I've just begun, because I would want to know that I'm more further ahead than I'm claiming, just in case
Yes.
I get
Yeah,
behind. So I don't know.
totally.
Theoretically for me, hopefully she's already finished it and it's just sitting there in a little locked, like cell, like, just until she's allowed to release it. Oh my God, just imagine she had the whole thing there and she'd actually have finished it all, but she's
She
just
finished like
slowly
all of the books, like all
scribbling
of
it
them.
out.
That would be amazing. I need her to be like Taylor Swift, where it's like every like 3 or 4 months we get something new from her, but
Oh, I wish she'd
not
almost
everyone
just
can be Taylor
deliver them
Swift.
as like she'd just like deliver them in novellas and just give us like half the book, half the book, half the book, like every 6
Yeah.
months. Just so I could just constantly feed my little obsession
Yeah, yeah.
constantly rather than
Or just
waiting.
like little bonus chapters like every couple of months, just like new like instead of doing 6 editions with the HOFAS release
Yes.
with like 6 different bonus chapters, just like 1 bonus chapter like a month and then charge people like $5 for them. I would pay
Exactly.
them.
And I'd
She'd probably
totally
make
pay
a lot more
it.
money
I
that
would
way.
totally pay it. I need my fix.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Without
right,
further
Nicole.
ado.
Tell us about your shot. Tell us about your shot that you're
All
taking.
right. Well, I don't have. So, what was that special drink that you had? I didn't have anything quite like that. So, mine's going to get a little creative today. All right. So, here's the lovely tequila I'm going to be drinking. Look at that. Look at that.
Nice,
It's
nice. Yeah,
Hecho
always a
in
good.
Mexico. Woohoo. But that's not interesting enough, is it? Right. Here we go. There's that. We're going to make an Asriel special. Now, so Ali's helped me produce this recipe. Gonna be really interesting, guys. It's like you're gonna really love this. All right, we're gonna start with all right, we're gonna make it. All right, this is soy sauce. All right, there we go. We got a nice soy sauce for our sushi. Because Azrael's saucy and he's also got the dark shadows. So we're gonna
Yeah, the
add that
shadow.
to our look at those shadows kicking in there.
Nice Asriel shadows.
Woohoo! All right. Azrael's a little spicy. So we're gonna add some chili flakes.
Oh, nice. He's pretty spicy.
Not
Get
too
those chili
spicy.
flakes in.
Let's not go too crazy here. Okay. Oh my God. That's going to kill me. Okay.
We may not be able to continue recording, so this may be all that we record.
I know. Any theories? I'm gonna have no theories after this. I'm just gonna be like on the floor. Got some
Yeah.
honey. Beechworth honey, guys. This is a great honey in Australia. It's delicious. From
Is
Victoria.
that
It's
because Azriel's a little sweet?
that's right. We've got a little sweet on
Yeah.
the inside. We like to
He
believe
is.
that he's,
He is so sweet on the inside, I think. I think he's so sweet on the inside.
and well, we need some blueberries. I don't know if you guys can see little blueberries for our because he's
His power is blue.
yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
That
Oh
is such
god.
a great Azriel. The Azriel. So if for all of you at home who are like, this sounds so good, now you have the recipe for the Azriel.
I should have put less chili in it. I had a choice here. Not good with spice.
You want me to
Oh,
count you down?
okay.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. All right. So I'm gonna give Nicole a minute to process that, and I'm just gonna take over the airtime here.
Woo! Actually,
Um,
wasn't that bad.
I'm
Wasn't that
impressed. Hopefully you just
bad?
like didn't process the taste too much, like if you did it as a real professional shot taker would, you just let it go down.
The tequila kind of burnt out the chili. Um,
Nice.
the blueberries went straight down. The soy sauce was almost salty, like
Yeah.
this, and then I don't know. I couldn't even really get the honey. That kind of just disappeared. But that should have been worse. Like, I mean, it wasn't
Okay.
good, but it wasn't
Yeah.
atrocious. There
Well,
you go, guys.
maybe you invented a great new shot.
I mean, I
Tequila,
don't think I
soy
did
sauce,
it. The soy
blueberries, and
sauce is a
honey.
little weird. It's a little weird, but it kind of
Yeah.
gave a saltiness to the tequila, which didn't not work. So
Yeah. And then if the honey was mixed in, maybe it would be like sweet and spicy, sweet and salty.
it's slightly gross.
All right. Well, we have I'm very excited that has happened. I'm excited that I've won the bet, and I'm terrified for what recipe Nicole will come up with
Oh yeah.
if she ends up winning the long game. She has lost this battle, but I think she's very much still in the war.
That's right. That's right. This is not over. This is not over at all.
Yeah. So today's episode, we're as much as we've talked a little bit about Bryce and Azriel at the top, we're not going to talk too much about that today. We're actually going to make a whole episode, actually 2 episodes. We're going to do 2 episodes on the Bryce and Azriel theory. Like when we tell you guys that there is evidence, there are receipts, we mean it. So much so that we need 2 episodes to get through it all. So we're hopefully going to not talk too much about that today. I mean, I know we can't really help ourselves sometimes. We go on tangents. But most of what we're going to talk about today is kind of like the Massverse. What have we learned? What questions do we have? What like small theories do we have? I think we've really just gotten the tiniest taste out of peeling back the onion or the layers of what the Massverse could be. So that's what today's episode is. We're going to start with a bit of a just like overview of what we learned.
Yeah.
Because if you're like us, you maybe did not fully process everything that you read. I certainly didn't. I had to go back and reread and really think and like write out my notes because it was coming at us so fast in those chapters in part 1 with Celine that
yeah.
I needed to like reread that, digest it, process it. So we're going to do that for you.
It was
All
so
right.
much this whole book was so much information. And that's probably been some of the negative feedback about it was where normally everything gets drip fed out with Sarah J. Maas. We actually just got so much information given to us. It was a lot and almost too much.
Almost,
And
yeah.
I'm really glad I've read through it twice because that second read through I was just able to absorb so much more of what was written. And as I said, actually see a few of the Easter eggs that are potentially in there for what future series are going to be. And just actually understanding a lot of what it was talking about because it was just information overload first time.
Yeah.
Plus, I was just too excited by
yeah.
and
Yeah. Okay, so here's what we know about the Massverse, okay? So 15,000 years ago, from the time of Crescent City, the Daglan which are the same as the Asteri. We learned that. They ruled Prythian. And according to Selene, the Asteri is like their true name. Daglan was like a different name. They corrupted the cauldron's magic. The cauldron was of the Prythian world, but it was corrupted by the Daglan / Asteri and made it their own. And Gwydion and Truth Teller, so the Star Sword and Truth Teller, were dipped in the cauldron to be made. And I think that's important because we also then learn, or it at least suggests, that to be made, which is a term from Prythian, meaning you're made by the cauldron, is to potentially have some Asteri magic in you. I don't know if that is significant or means anything, but I think it's interesting that to be made equals to have some kind of magic from the Asteri. The horn, the mask, and the harp were also made by the Asteri / Daglan. So that's also very interesting to me. But eventually in the Prythian world, Thea and her husband, I can't remember his name. Do you remember his name? He kind of just is like a
The
non-figure.
king or
The High King, yeah. I feel like it
oh,
starts with an F.
no, I can't. King. It's like Fians or something. Yeah, Fenris.
Something with an
No,
F.
yeah. Not off
He
the top of
ends
my
up
head.
not really being an
Yeah,
important
the
figure.
king of
Yeah,
Prythian.
we're gonna call him the High King. Yeah. So Thea and her husband, who eventually becomes the High King, they overthrow the Asteri using the power of the Trove. We don't really get details on how they do that, which is kind of something Bryce is really frustrated about. So we don't really understand. They overthrow the Asteri, the Daglan leave, everything is good. Thea and her husband become High King and High Queen of Prythian. They rule, there's like peace and prosperity. This is kind of the time that we're told in ACOTAR is when, the High Lords were kind of united and there was all of this peace.
Yeah. And he was very much seen as
Then
a good king. Like, he was seen as
he
a good
was.
king by people. And you could even tell with Az and that talking, he's very highly respected. Even by today's high fae, they have seemed to have a respect for this first king of Prythian,
This
first
first High
and
King.
only king of Prythian.
And in fact, they even talk about in Silver Flames, like when Nesta creates her 3 made swords, her 3 made weapons, Amryn is like pushing Rhysand to become High King, and sort of says, it seems like fate, Rhysand, that we haven't seen these kinds of weapons in 15,000 years, and they end up at your doorstep. So very, very interesting potential for who's going to be this High King.
I know. Or queen, guys.
Or queen, or High Queen, yeah. So anyway, then there's also Peleus, who was the general for Thea and the High King. And Peleus was up to some sketchy stuff, all right? He was scrying, he was like looking into the stars and the universe. And he and Thea decide that they want to overthrow the High King. I don't really know. I think they just decided they wanted to overthrow him. I'm not sure that it goes into detail on why.
I think we get like an indication that maybe Peleus is in her ear and kind of convinces
Yeah.
her that she would be a better ruler, that maybe they're in love, and that like just kind of
all for
eventually
power.
convinces her to off the king.
Yeah. So they lure him to the Bog of Urid, and that's where they kill him. And that's sort of indicated as like why the bog becomes evil, I guess.
Yeah, but they also said outline that it was like the playground of the Asteri or something at the time. It actually sounds like it was a lot more lush and nice. Like, it had all these monsters, but it was like beautiful. But then once that happens, it becomes Urid and becomes really awful and
The magic gets
terrible.
corrupted somehow.
Yeah.
Which makes me really think that, like, again, I keep talking about how, like, to be made is to be connected to the Asteri. I think this is like a mini theory. I think like the magic of the land of Prythian is going to somehow be tied to the Asteri and the Daglan. So anyway, so they kill him. Thea goes and rules. And while she's ruling, she realizes she's got 2 daughters, Helena and Selene. And she's like, well, I'm Fae. I'm going to live forever. I don't want to give up my crown, but I also want my daughters to rule. So I should just conquer worlds like the Asteri / Daglan did. So Peleus starts to, talk to the stars. We don't exactly know who he's talking to, but he comes to Thea one day and he says, "Hey, I found this uninhabited world that we can go and conquer." And he kind of just whispers in her ear and is like, "You
Yeah.
should go and go to this world. You should use the harp and the mask, or the harp and the horn, to open this portal, and then we'll go conquer this other world. It's uninhabited. It'll be great." So she does that. She opens it up and she gets there, and it's not uninhabited. Surprise, surprise.
Hmm.
There are humans there, and there is also um other fae.
Yeah.
And she thinks that those other fae, we find out, are Regulus, which really are the Asteria Daglan, but they trick Thea. They make her
Mhm.
believe that they are just regular old fae that were there and that they're welcoming them with open arms. And she's like, "Great, cool, we're gonna go there.
Yep.
It's gonna
No
be great."
questions asked. Awesome.
Yeah, all good. It is important to note that so Thea goes. So the Dusk Court, which is what Thea is kind of part of, even though she's High Queen, along with people from the Autumn Court. She
Mm.
convinces people from the Autumn Court to go. No one else from Prythian goes. So that's why when we get to Midgard, we see Starborn magic and we see fire magic, like the
Yes.
Autumn Court
Yes.
in Prythian and the Autumn King. Makes sense. I knew they had to be connected, and they are.
I know.
I know. So they get there, and eventually they realize, oh crap, Regulus is a stary. He's bad. We got to do something about this. They also realize that Regulus brings additional fae from another world
Yeah.
that is not their world over. We know that that has to be the Throne of Glass world
Yes.
because these fae can all shift, unlike Prythian, where only very, very powerful fae can shift.
Mhm.
Um, those two branches of Fae eventually become the different types of veneer. You've got the shifters, and then you've got the high Fae. But we know after reading CC2 that they're all Fae, but now we kind of get confirmation that Regulus brought them all over. She eventually gets in contact with Adis, who she realizes is her mate. They work together.
Mhm.
They try to overthrow Regulus and the Asteri. They cannot. In the final battle, they Thea realizes that she's going to lose, so she
Mhm.
splits her power in three. A third of it she keeps herself, and we eventually learn in CC3 that she hides it in the kind of land of Aelin. A third of it she gives to Helena, her daughter, and a third of it she gives to Selene. In the very final moments, Selene is going back to the Prythian world, and Helena is supposed to go with her but doesn't make it, and they seal off the gates. And Selene ends up in the Prythian world, Helena remains in Midgard, and Thea is killed.
Something,
So,
and sorry, I'm gonna, like, sideswipe here for a second. Something
you
I
should,
still
yeah.
really wanna understand is because it seems like wherever that power was kept, it, like, took the life from the earth around it. Like, I don't know, just it sheerly holding that power just
Yeah.
made the earth sick. Like, Aelin, was really
Mhm.
it was unpleasant, it felt wrong. Obviously, the prison had the same feel, and then she kind of made it
Yep.
worse by adding all the monsters and everything. But it sucks the life out of the earth, and I still want to understand. I still feel like I would still like to understand that better. Like,
Yeah.
why did it have that effect? Why did the
Yeah.
starlight power have that effect?
Why, and, like, why is the Starborn power is it bad? Like, is it
Well,
evil?
something
I'm not
that I
sure.
really came away from, because when she takes the power from, I think it was Selene,
Yeah.
in Prythian world, she kind of says the gift and the curse. Like, she says this is a
Yeah.
gift and a curse. And I think at the time Bryce doesn't really think about it. She's just like, oh yeah, I'm just taking the power. And she doesn't think about the curse associated. Like, I do sometimes wonder whether all that power can corrupt, whether it, especially because Bryce's behavior, the more power she got, a lot of people have spoken about Bryce and not liking her behavior towards Hunt throughout the rest of
Yeah.
the book. And I wonder if that starlight power, having all that power, does have a negative side effect. If you think about
Yeah.
when she's walking through Prythian, there's all the cave drawings and they show all this sort of destruction and this war that seemed to happen. And it talks about rivers of starlight going through it, rivers of starlight, and them killing the Pegasuses and things like that. So it's like, were they good and something was killing them, or was that possibly the evil? Like,
Yeah. Well, and, eh, Thea theoretically had all that power, and while she had all 3 parts of that power, decided to murder her husband, the High
mhm,
King. So is that the result somehow of the power kind of corrupting?
Yeah, well,
You
power
know, it's
definitely
hard to say.
corrupts. Definitely a lot of power can corrupt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. Okay, where we're at, Helena and Celine split off. Thea gets killed. We kind of know what happens to Helena. We knew that before. She is forced to marry Peleus, and so a lot of House of Flame and Shadow is really discovering her story and how she created those caves so that she could communicate with Adis, hide, her mom's power, all of those things. Selene goes back to Prythian and hides for a while in kind of like the old court in these tunnels. She carves the story of what happened in those tunnels.
mhm.
And there's a lot of like, I think this is interesting. There's a lot of mentions, and you've talked a lot about this, Nicole, of like an above and below. And I
Yes.
don't know that we really explore that fully. So I think there's something there.
Yeah.
And then somehow, and she doesn't even, she's like, it's not worth mentioning how I became the High Lady of the Night Court. And you're like, it's very worth mentioning.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
somehow,
Please tell us immediately.
yeah, tell us, Celine somehow comes out of hiding and marries the High Lord, not High King, the
Mhm.
High Lord of the Night Court, and then continues to like so now all of the night court is bred from her line
Yeah.
essentially.
Yes.
And then when she dies, she decides to hide her power under the prison, and that's what sort of corrupts it, makes the world go around, and then Bryce is able to take that power, and now she's got the 2/3 of the power, which he eventually has to find the third, to unite the Starlight, of Thea.
And
So
and this
that's kind of
ultimately
everything we know.
yeah, and this ultimately explains why Rune and Rhysand look so similar,
So
how they're
similar.
actually related, that they're obviously descendants from Selene and Helena,
Helena.
and that is how they look so alike, but then why are they so close to looking the same? Like, it's one thing to have a distant descendant. I've heard a lot of people say, is there more to this as to why they look so similar? Why,
Yes.
are we seeing reincarnation? Are we seeing, I don't know, just things coming around again, powers resurging? There's a lot going on here, guys. There are a
There's a lot
lot
going
of
on.
just
Mhm.
seeds happening, but I really can't wait to get into a little bit of that thoughts and theories around this above and below and what this means. Because my theory, guys, is that I don't think we've killed the true villains. As a matter of fact, I think
I
we've just
agree.
opened up the doorway to who the real villains are going to be. I think the Asteri, yeah, they were bad and they were taking power and that, but I feel like they're just the beginning. They were just the beginning. I
Yeah.
feel like, look, do we jump into it now? Do we jump into the Princes of Hel?
Let's do it. I think
Let's
so. I
do
mean,
it.
I think
Yeah.
we both agree that like there is something to this metaphor of above and below. That that metaphor is happening in the Prithian world, right? It's not necessarily connected to hell, but above and below, like that also connects to like the concept of hell. So,
Yeah, yeah. So look, my
what do you think
theory
about the
is that
princes?
I don't think the Princes of Hell are overly good, and I think that there's a
Yes,
good
I
chance that
agree.
they're going to end up being the major villains. Whether it's going to be all the Princes of Hell, the biggest one I have a question about is Adis, because Adis
Adis, yeah.
doesn't seem bad, even though he might be complicated. Apollyon is a bit mixed. Thanatos is definitely like probably questionable, but then there's the four other princes that are off fighting other wars.
Helping helping to liberate other worlds.
Yeah, I'm
No,
like,
that's super
"Really?
sus.
Really?" Like, and I think there's a lot of wars between the princes as well. They're on very different things, and if we think of all these worlds being combined, is there the possibility that some of these princes are actually Valg? I mean, what there was
I
like
think they're Vogue. I
3.
mean,
Mhm.
I've been saying for months. I think I posted my like Asteri or that the Princes of Hell were Vogue theory on Instagram like 3 months ago.
Yeah,
I've been saying for a very long time that I think the Princes of
yes,
Hell are Vogue, and I still think that's true.
and you
I am not
outlined a
convinced
few
that
things,
that's
like that the world there was extremely cold,
cold and
and
dark,
how
which is
when
how the
yeah,
Vogue's world is described. Yep.
yeah, and when
Um,
Bryce and Hunt went there, obviously it was extremely cold, it was
yep.
extremely icy, and yeah, I just and I feel like if you go back and you reread the scene where Bryce and Hunt go to hell, but look at it from the perspective of, imagine that they are the villains, but right now they want to get Bryce on
Yep,
side,
that they're
right?
trying to
They
manipulate.
want
Yep,
her. Actually, imagine that they want her power, because if they can control Bryce, they can potentially control the Dread Trove, which opens up the other universes, things like that. When you read it from that perspective and you imagine, I mean, are these princes even telling the truth?
I don't
Particularly
think
when
they
she, I
are,
mean,
yeah.
obviously the biggest line I've questioned is when she asked them, "Did you make Hunt my mate?" And Adis is extremely quick to jump in and say, "No, no, no, we didn't do that." He says it really quickly to the point that you go, "Really?" I'm like, I feel like there's a bit more to that story that you're not
Yep,
telling us. I
yep,
truly believe they have absolutely made Hunt to be her mate, or to be as close to her mate as possible, because they want her power. If they and
yep,
think about how Hunt kept taking her power, particularly during lovemaking scenes. He was taking her power. He then had the ability to wear the mask and control it because he took that power. If he continues to have that, he can control the Dread Trove. He can control the
yep.
mask.
Which
Like,
means the Princes of Hell could potentially control those things.
exactly. And if he
Yep,
has an ability that he has a bit of a switch in his head that can flick into Umbra Mortis mode, like, and not be like sweet nice Hunt that we're used to, like, that could be really dangerous. So
yep,
it's really interesting to read that scene and think of it from that different perspective. I mean, and
mhm.
just consider it. What did you
Well,
think,
and
Alan?
no, I mean, honestly, I agree. I don't think they're being fully truthful, and I don't think we should, like, expect them to be, right? I think it's super suspicious. They do happen to be the only creatures in the universe who've been able to, out of what we now know are thousands of worlds that the Asteri have conquered, they're the only one that could fight them back. That has to
Mhm.
mean that they have immense power that potentially is evil. The other thing that I picked up on in this book, in House of Flame and Shadow, is they talk about the halo that Hunt wears,
Mhm.
and they
Yes.
actually describe it as a collar. And they're like, that was a tool the Asteri tried to use on us, and it didn't work, and it was a collar.
Mhm.
Which to me was like, that's exactly what the Vogue use, is collars, which
Yeah.
makes me think like maybe the Asteri invented the concept of the collar, but then the
Right.
Vogue picked it up and reused it in the Throne of Glass world.
Yes.
And I think I believe I need to go back and find this because I can't find this interview, but everyone talks about it on the online. I think SJM confirmed that Throne of Glass is happening at the same time
Yes.
as a,
Yes.
a court of as ACOTAR and as Crescent City,
Yes.
which tells me like that those
Those
other
little three
brothers,
princes could be
yeah, they're
trying
off
to
doing something. Maybe what they're
invert a
off
glass
doing
world.
is conquering, yeah, the other the Throne of Glass world. Um, Obviously,
Well,
there's 4 of
yeah.
them missing. There's only 3 in Throne of Glass. So, there's some things that we need to find out still. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
The signs to me are there.
and something that was really interesting was when that final, like, fight is happening, right? And the Princes of Hel and all their army is fighting for Midgard.
Yeah.
And at the time, I can't remember if it was because Bryce was wearing the mask or she could see, but she could see what they truly look like. And they kept speaking about that they were
Yeah.
terrifying. That these
Yeah.
people are like, oh, good thing they're on our side because they're freaking terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like
They don't they're, like,
they don't.
choosing to look like little like human fae, but
Yeah,
their
but
true
their
form
mind
is
is
these, like, beastly
white.
creatures.
Yeah. And do you really think that the Princes of Hell did this just out of the goodness of their own heart? Like, Adis was just so in love with Thea 15,000 years ago. He's just like, I still believe in her mission and I'm going to free Midgard because of the goodness of my heart. Do you really think that that's the purpose? Or do
No.
you think that there is so much more to it? The biggest line, and there's so much to this line, was when Adis and Napoleon found out that Bryce went to ACOTAR World, and
Yeah.
he turns to his brother and he says, "Don't fall into romanticism." That line, now there's so much to that line. A lot of
There's
Bridesreal
so much
fans
that could be
will
there.
say that that was the moment that, like, Bridesreal didn't just get pulled to the the dagger. She also got pulled to her mate, right? And whether
Yeah.
that romanticism is about that, but it's also she got pulled to where the dread trove is. She went to where
Yep.
potentially where they want her to go, because if they want to get hold of that dread trove to take over the universe, whatever they're trying to do, she just made that possible. And if they have control of Hunt in the future, that would be, they've just got free. She's just opened the gate to that now. Like we've,
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
got a whole nother possibility. So
Right. Well, and obviously we're gonna do, as I've said, we're gonna do a whole episode on this. But I have also thought for a while that I think Azrael could be connected to the Princes of Hell, to the Vogue somehow. Because I think, like, even though Rhysand has like the power of night and shadows, they always described Azrael's power as being different from that, as being more something different, right? It's
yeah,
much more like almost a little bit more sinister. So I
dark.
think that Azrael could be connected. And so if we think about potentially these like reincarnations of Thea in Bryce and maybe Adis in Azrael, right? And then Adis saying don't fall, or Apollyon saying to Adis don't fall into romanticism, right? Like don't let yourself believe in like this epic love story that could be happening. I think there's so much in that line.
Yeah.
It's really
And
interesting to
just
me.
the name Azrael is a really powerful name in like the Muslim religion, in a lot of things, because it is the what is it? The angel of death.
It's an
That is
angel of
what it
death.
is. And
Uh-huh.
like you will find in those religions, they will never name their child Azrael, because it's like it's seen as like that's just calling for, danger. It is such a powerful
Yeah.
name, angel of death. So when you think about that, it's pretty intense, and it could definitely, and if we kind of Prince of Hell, Angel of Death, there's definitely a few links there. And the
Yeah.
blue, we got to go into this another time. This is Bryzerial land. We don't want to get too far into it,
I
but
couldn't even broach the
I know.
topic.
Here we are. Just kind of sorry, guys, for anyone that's not into this. Like, we're not just going to go into this. We are going to talk about other theories as well and stuff. But it's hard not to come back to it because there's so many Easter eggs and it's
I
just so
know, I
exciting.
know.
But when they first get to Hell and then it's all misty and stuff, and then Bryce sees these blue lights kind of coming towards her, and it ends up being Adis.
Yeah.
Blue lights. What do we, when we think of like a couple of three little blue lights, what do we think
What
of?
do we
Like,
think of? We think of
we think of a
Azrael.
certain little Azrael that, we are all about his little siphon blue lights. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
yes, yes.
So, okay, so going back to just more reasons why we think the Princes of Hell are like bad, whether they're vulgar or not. So also, I found it super sus that when they're like all powerful beings. They're super powerful, right? They defeated the Asteri and the Daglin. Bryce is like floating away in the end in the portal, and Hunt is like, "You have to help us! You have to help us!" You know, and they've been so interested in Bryce and her power, and they're
Mhm.
just like, "Sorry, she's gone. We can't help." Like,
Yeah, nothing we can do.
what the heck? I think they're just like that for them. They're like, "Oh, this is best case scenario because
She's out of
like
the picture. Hunt
she's
can
out of the
control the
picture."
red robe now.
Yeah,
And
it's so crazy to me that they, with all of the interest they've shown in Bryce and in all of their goodwill, and they're like, "Oh, we just want to help you. We want to help save you. Like we don't want history to repeat itself." When she's dying, they can't lift a finger
I
to help.
know. I think I recall it saying though that like Adis had tears in his eyes or something like that. Like I don't know, they did seem like they were emotional maybe. But I think that's really interesting though. And I think that would, as I
Yeah.
said, it would make a lot of sense. They certainly were just sort of like, oh, there's nothing we can do. No, we've got
Mhm.
nothing in, like no options here, like nothing. She's just
Yeah.
gone. And it would certainly, if we have this theory that they want to control the dread trove. Hunt
Maybe
has
they
siphoned that power now. He has access to that dread trove. He doesn't overly need Bryce. And if he lost her, he would fully lose it. Like he would go into full Umbra Mortis mode for sure. He would like
yeah.
Bryce is the only thing keeping him in sort of good hunt mode.
Yep.
So if I don't know if it was their intention to switch him into that, that would be a very, very easy way to do
Mhm.
it. So yeah, it wouldn't
Well,
necessarily.
or he ends up using the mask, right? So if they're trying to test his capabilities, maybe they're just like, let's see what he does here, right? Let's just see if he tries to use the mask and if he can. Yeah, I think we both agree that they're gonna be
Yeah,
we're not done
yeah,
with them for sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So look, and I mean, obviously at the end they claim you won't see us again. We're going. See you later. Enjoy Midgard. Have a good life. But Yeah, never say never, guys. Never say never. There are a lot of those lines in here, right, that had like, I'd never do this. I would never hurt Bryce. I would never. And I'm just like, ooh, never say never. If you even have to
Never
say
say
that
never.
line, I'm instantly concerned that you've said it. And now the
Yeah.
opposite may happen. So I, I think we're going to see the Prince of Hell back. I mean, I think at least it's going to be the other four princes that we haven't encountered yet that are going to be the really bad ones. Or there's
Mhm.
a lot more complexities to Thanatos, Apollyon, and Adis than we think. As I said,
Yeah.
Adis is the only one that really confuses me that I sort of think he seems like he's good. Like he's the
Yeah.
only one that I can't fully buy that he's bad. But
I
everyone else,
know.
I feel like I don't have much trust there. Like,
Yeah, and I mean, it could be a scenario where Adis kind of goes against his brothers.
yeah,
But the other thing I will say is I'm not fully convinced that we're totally done with the Asteri either.
yes.
Right, like,
Well, we don't know about their home planet.
we don't
Like,
know
they
about their home
kind of
planet,
said that it kinda got destroyed because they just used all its resources, but
and
they
they don't
didn't.
even remember where it is.
No, but
But
they didn't just say it was all gone, and I wonder if now that they've been killed, it might just piss off the major Asteri, and then they're gonna come
yeah.
hunting for
Right, and, like,
everyone.
who's to say there's not a ton more of them?
Yeah.
I think I feel like it has to be intentional that SJM connected the concept of being made, which we now know Nesta is made, Elaine is made, Bryce is made, all of those
Mhm.
swords are made, all of the Dread Trove is made, all of that is now connected to Asteri magic, right?
Yeah.
It is their magic that they're calling on that makes them made, that gives it that sentience, right? The cauldron didn't have
Yeah.
sentience until the Asteri messed with it.
Mm, mhm.
So whether it's the Asteri themselves or something related to their magic and how it's potentially like influencing and changing like the Prithian world, I'm not sure, but I just don't think we're done totally with the Asteri and the impact that they have had on all of these worlds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, the reality for me was I feel like they defeated the Asteri fairly easily, to be perfectly honest. And I think possibly other people feel the same way. I thought it was going to be a lot harder to kill them. They've been alive
Yeah,
for 15,
yeah.
no, sorry, more than 15,000 years. That's just how long they've
Just
been in Midgard. These
Midgard,
guys have
yeah,
been alive for millennia. And then Bryce goes and kills them in like 10 days. Like,
yeah, and is just able
it
to send them
was.
into, like, a black hole, and it's like,
Yeah, I was
I'm
gonna
not sure
say
about
that
that.
feels too easy. That was way too easy. And while I can
Yeah,
kind of get that maybe Sarah J. Maas need to wrap it up because she wants to get into some new stories and some new bigger world stuff that she sort of need to wrap up this Asteri storyline. Yeah, I would like to have seen. I mean, ideally, I would have loved
they
to have
might
seen
come
the
back.
full Avengers. I saw someone post this meme about what we wanted that ending to be, which was like all the worlds coming in at the
Yeah,
end, like
yeah.
Throne of Glass, all their main people, all ACOTAR world, all coming to fight the Asteri together. That would have been like, yes, that was the ending we needed. Mind you, I still believe that that is coming. I believe that that is
Yes,
going to
I do
be
too.
Twilight of the Gods. I think Twilight of the Gods is going to be the Avengers book. So, she's just giving us little breadcrumbs right now, leading us up to what that's going to be. But I have
Yeah.
hope that we're still going to get that in the future. But
We're
going back
gonna
to, yeah,
Oh, I was just gonna say, for listeners who don't know what we're talking about when we talk about Twilight of the Gods, we're gonna do a deeper dive on this in the Brazzerial stuff, but in 2015, there were 2 Pinterest boards that SJM had created, for potential new series. One of those Pinterest boards was called Crescent City, and it's very obvious it turned into the Crescent City series. The other Pinterest board was called Twilight of the Gods, and it had a lot of very, very interesting things. So the theory out there is that there will be a new series called Twilight of the Gods. Well, we're going to talk about what's on that Pinterest board in future episodes and kind of why it may or may not
yeah.
support the Brazzerial theory, but
Well, not just
that's where
that,
we kind of think
but
this epic crossover is going to happen.
yeah, it in that Pinterest board, which I have shared on my Instagram, it's already got a few things in it that have already happened in ACOTAR world.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to call it out here. It has a mask, like Nesta's
Mhm.
mask. It's got like what kind of looks like Valkyrie.
Yep.
It's got heaps of Sailor Moon suggestions. It's got a bit of Native American, which goes into my Stone Mother theory, the Stone Mother song that Bryce plays for Azrael and Nesta as the first song in ACOTAR World. Like, don't think that stone. She didn't just pick Stone Mother out of anywhere. It wasn't some song
No.
that you'll find on your top 40 playlist because I looked it up. It doesn't exist. Yeah, anyway, there's just a lot of little pointers in there that you're like, oh, that looks like stuff that's already happened, and then possibly stuff that's going to happen, which makes me believe that she's been building up to it. And I think she released a bit of a post or something a little while ago where she said maybe it's time to take this one off the back burner. Like maybe it's time to bring this
Yeah.
freshen this one up and dust it off and start to explore it again. And I think that was around the time she started to write A Court of Silver Flame, which would be based on this with the mask and everything. That's when all these theories started to be introduced.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hence
And
I'm
that
really
Pinterest
excited.
board is now deleted,
Mm-hmm.
which I think she deleted it because it would have too many spoilers.
Yeah.
The other thing we know is that Bloomsbury renewed her for 7 books.
Yeah.
We know, or is it, I'm not sure. We know that one of them will be a Crescent City book, a 4th Crescent City. She talked about that in an interview. We also know that she is at least writing another ACOTAR book, ACOTAR 6.
Mm-hmm.
She's writing it now, but she has
Mm-hmm.
said that there will be 2 more of those, I think. Which would leave 4 books in a different series.
Yes. Yeah.
I think
And
that series is the Twilight of the Gods series,
my
which will be the
theory
crossover.
is if what I've been thinking about and everything, and even if Hel is this major villain and stuff, we are still at the very beginning of this story. Like
Yeah.
we're talking, it's not like we're just going to get this next ACOTAR book and it's going to answer all our questions. It's going to just scratch the surface. Hence
Yeah.
why I kind of claimed that Crescent City 3, if we're opening up to a whole new world, it's basically just right back at ACOTAR. We're at book 1, Throne of Glass. We've still got a whole heap of books to go. So it
Yeah.
could be
Yeah.
ages before some of these things come to pass. It
Yeah.
could take a while.
Yeah.
She's gonna slow burn us something shocking. Like it's gonna
Well,
be a
and
lot of
it's like,
pain.
we kind of defeated I remember feeling after reading all the ACOTAR books, like, I kind of felt like they defeated Hybern really easily. And it was like, oh, it's because Hybern's not the bigger issue. The bigger issue is, as we learn in Silver Flames, is actually Koschei, who is pulling the strings of the human queens, Briallin in particular, potentially pulling the strings of Hybern. So I think that it's because there's this
And
larger kind of evil out there.
yeah.
And
And
I will say go ahead, because I have a question, but I wanna have your reaction to
well, I
this
was just
first.
gonna say, and nothing like Crochet just disappeared in Silver
Yes.
Flame. Like he just kind of like he just like he was there and then he wasn't there, and then it was like, wait, he just like what? He just went back to his lake or whatever. It's like he's still hanging around, like
Koschei,
and yeah,
do not sleep on Koschei. I'll just tell you that right now. He is there is something there. It's
something's
what
brewing.
we know about him. This is the stuff I think about at night. I can't fall asleep. And I've been thinking about Koschei a lot lately. Is we know that he's described as a death god. We
Mhm.
have been told that multiple times he tried to take over Prithian and was unsuccessful. We also know that he is the sibling of the Bone Carver and the Weaver, who are now dead. And we thought that he was an Asteri / Daglan, but we find out that he's not, actually. He's
Mm.
not a Daglan. So then what is he? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's so interesting. There's something there with him that I don't know what it is yet. I just don't know that we have had enough Easter eggs on Koschei at all to
No,
figure it
it's
out.
still a very like we've just gotten little snippets of him, but not
Yeah,
enough to kind of formulate a real hypothesis theory about
yeah,
who he actually is, what he actually is. But look, I guess at least we've crossed a few off the list. He's potentially not Asteri, not Daglan, but he's definitely something powerful, and he's definitely got greater intentions
yeah.
than we're
Something's
current. Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. Something's brewing. That is for
Yeah.
sure. Um, now, did you have a question before I jump into
Well,
something else?
I was gonna jump into something else too. I wonder if
Yeah,
it's the same thing. It probably
yeah,
is.
no, you go
Yeah.
first.
Okay. So we've kind of talked a little bit about ACOTAR World and how it maybe connects to the Massverse. We could not call this episode complete without talking a little bit about some of the hints and suggestions we get of connections to the Throne of Glass world,
Mm,
specifically with Lidia. I was so interested in what we learned about Lidia. Um, I don't even know where
Yeah.
to begin. And again, I did not do a Throne of Glass reread, so it's not as fresh in my brain.
No.
But
But
what I remember us learning is she says that she is descended, like that they have different gods, right? They have different gods than what the rest of sort of Midgard had. They have different traditions, and that
mhm.
she is descended from an ancestor called Brannon,
Yes.
which
Yes.
I think we know what that means.
Yeah.
That
It's
means that she is part of the Shifter Fae that came over, or she's descended from the Shifter Fae that came over from the Throne of Glass world. But not only that, she is a direct descendant of Brannon, who was like royalty and ruled that world.
and
So
descendant and a relative theoretically to Aelin,
Aelin,
like,
right?
which kind of blows my mind. Like, when we got that
Yes.
Easter egg, I was already theorizing that she was related to Throne of
Well, because
Glass
they
World,
describe
and then
her appearance is described very similar
yes,
to Aelin's.
yes.
So everyone was kind of thinking they must be related somehow. But this like really
Yes.
confirms it in my
And I
mind.
love this because first of all, I love Lydia's character. I love that
Oh, me
she is
too.
this double agent, she is a good person. She's had to do so many evil things. Like, and that's just, I love that complexity. I really feel for her because that's got to be such a challenging thing to have people hating you every day and doing such evil
Mhm.
things, but actually hating what you're doing, but doing it for the people that you love. But then to find out that she was actually sitting on all this power, even with the Asteri sucking some of that power out. Oh no, she is brimming with firepower
With
to the point
firepower.
that the fire sprites are like, whoa, you have a ton of firepower, girl. Like,
Yeah,
they were impressed. But I'm just like, because Aelin lost all her power at the end of Throne of Glass, which killed me so much. I was just like, can she just
yeah.
get left with more power than that? I
Just
needed
at
that
least
power. So now,
something. Leave her with something.
yeah, so now like Lydia getting that power back and having all this power, I'm just so excited. And there's her twins who potentially have the firepower as well. I know there was
At least
fire in
they're
the
described as
eyes.
having fire in their eyes, yeah,
Mhm,
which is
mhm.
interesting.
And this adds to, now we didn't jump into this before, we need to jump into this with the Princes of Hell about Jessica and fighting princes with fire. So something interesting in Crescent City 3 was Jessica didn't like the Princes of Hell, that it was
No.
Apollyon who had cursed her for endless life.
Yeah,
And so she was working with the
the
astronomer
astronomer.
to
Mhm.
try and find a way to beat and kill or get rid of the Princes of Hell. And the only thing she'd found to be effective so far was dragon fire. Hence why I think that the whole dragon is very, very important in this
Yep.
book, and that is one of the only things that defeats hell. Now, is it coincidence that at the same time that story's been introduced, we also get introduced to Lydia and Brennan's line and her twins that are all potentially going to have firepower, which may also fight Princes of Hell. I
If
cannot
they're
help but think we just had these characters thrown in to just be a bit of a sideline support to Tharian while he was fighting with the Viper Queen. Like,
no
no
way.
way. This firepower is important and it's going to be
Yes.
necessary for the future wars to come. And that is a big reason that I think the Princes of Hell are actually going to be the major villains and we're going to need this firepower.
Yes. And that is why I think they're Vogue. That to me just further strengthens the argument that they're Vogue, because what do we know is the one of the only things that kill the Vogue? Aelin's fire.
Yes.
So like I think they have to be Vogue. Like Lydia would not have this power
Mhm.
if they weren't. So I
And
think Lydia is going to be a massive character in the next Crescent City book, but also in this like Throne of the God, not Throne of the Gods,
Twilight of the Gods.
Twilight of the Gods. Thank you. There's too many nouns.
I know.
I'm recovering from a cold too, so I'm like my brain's not fully functioning. In this Twilight of the Gods kind of crossover series, I think her firepower is going to be really important.
Yes, yes, for sure. And yeah, I'm so excited for potentially more Throne of Glass like to come into
Yeah.
this and how there might be a need to link up with Throne of Glass World in the future if we do have these major villains and it being like, well, these are my home people. So let's go back to them and see if we can grab a few of them to come back and help us fight this war. I love that
Yeah.
we've got that connection now. We've only just scratched the surface of Rune and Lydia. I'm almost upset that there was the bonus chapter about. Did you read the bonus chapter of Rune and Lydia?
I did. Yeah.
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 getting married.
was
I was just kind of like, oh, that's a bit rushed.
yeah.
I don't know. It's
And
kind of
like,
like that was kind of like
I
could have
just
had
like
more of a
I
build up.
need what I really want is
A
I
spice scene.
either want their story yeah, I want the spice, and I either want their story to be really important for the next book, and so we get a lot of them, which I think it will, or and really I'd be fine with both, like a novella that's basically like Frost and Starlight, where it's just like them having spice scenes nonstop and kind of
And a
living their
winter
life.
solstice or
And
something.
yeah, and it's fine.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm gonna sideswipe here. I'm actually going back to something we were just talking about before, and that was so when Lydia got pregnant with the twins and this this religious like coupling, like people have got all these theories about it that maybe it was actually um Tamlin, that maybe it was Tamlin that was who she connected with. I mean, that's a bit
Hmm.
weird. But that
I'm
I
not
mean
sure. I don't know how from what we have seen so far, I don't know that there's anything that would support other crossovers, right? Like it was pretty clear that like without the horn there was no crossovers.
yeah,
Um
there was nowhere else in Midgard that you could get a connection to another world. It was more just her connecting with other Fae like herself to
yeah,
create
yeah,
more sort of pure Fae, like the pure Fae like her powers. So,
right, right.
yeah, yeah.
Now, it does sound a lot like Kalenmai. I will give people that.
Mm,
So which is interesting because theoretically Lydia is supposed to be from this other world of Fae, um, that wouldn't have those same traditions of Kalenmai. So it does I
no.
have kind of always asked myself, like, do the Fae have a whole like a single origin? Right? Is there like even further back they were the same origin and then they split and then they came back together? That would be interesting. And Kalenmai could certainly because they say that Kalenmai is like this extremely ancient ritual and tradition. Um, I really,
Yeah,
really want to go rewrite maybe not reread all of Throne of Glass, but at least
just
read
the
like
final book, just the
yeah,
final book.
Kingdom of
I think
Ash
that will
because
give you a huge amount.
yeah, I think there would be a lot there because I know they talk about when the Fae crossed, right? They like left and, kind of followed into the stars or something is what they say. So I really want to go at the very least reread those chapters and see if I can glean any
Yeah,
hints.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
I'll do that in a couple of weeks and
Yes,
I'll bring my
yes.
findings to the
Cool.
podcast.
All right. I wanna ask you a few questions before we, like, wrap
Okay.
up.
Okay.
What do you think ACOTAR book 6 is gonna be about?
I think it has to be about Azrael, right? Like it's
Mhm.
got to be about Azrael. He's the last character to explore. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe Elaine. Ugh, we all I hate Elaine.
I find Elaine a little boring at this point.
I'm like, oh, Elaine is so boring.
I think it's gonna be Az, and I think it's gonna be Nesta. I think we've got more Nesta's story. The way it finished
Yes.
off, Bryce handing over the sword and the dagger and saying, "You need to keep going. You need to keep growing." And if we look into the
Yep.
Twilight of the Gods and this whole Valkyrie and stuff, and even the
Mhm.
complexities between Nesta and Rhysand and all this still animosity between those two.
It's still not fully
And
resolved. Yeah.
yeah, and Nesta's just took it all in this book. She was just kind of taking it, like she wasn't really fighting back. She was just kind of
Yeah.
like still being relatively downtrodden, for lack of a better way to explain it. I think she's still in need of really finding her own power. And I think there's still more to explore there, as
Yeah.
well as Azrael. And they have such a beautiful friendship. I love this sort of
In this
friendship
book. Yeah.
connection. And I think because, and when you think about Az and the kind of girl that he needs to end up with, Nestor is one of the few people that understands his darkness because he's got some real darkness in him. And this is why I kind
Mhm.
of don't think that, Elaine's going to be right for him. And possibly even Gwyn will be challenging because he has some real darkness, potentially some kinkiness too. But
We can only
Nestor's
hope.
one of the few people that understands that dark power and owning that dark power. And I think that's why even throughout Silver Flame, he wasn't mean to her, like where the others just
No.
had this hate for her. He was always quite, he was like Switzerland, he was just like being like, I don't hate you. I maybe don't love you, but I'm just like, I get that you complex. I get that you
I get
complex
you.
going through
Yeah.
shit and I'm just kind of okay with that. So and then just to see their relationship actually growing and developing in Crescent City
Yes.
3, that was actually one of my favorite things, to see that the two of them really growing and developing, and then seeing Nesta looking all confused as to why Az was acting really weird with Bryce. Like
Yeah, I
that was
know, I
also
know.
my favorite. I was just like,
It
"Oh."
is so it's so clear in CC3 that their relationship has evolved, that Nessa and Az
Mhm.
are, like, pretty close.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to either to see that, and it'll be really interesting to see how SJM handles this crossover, like,
Mhm.
in CC or in ACOTAR 6. Like, is it gonna be post that happening, and then they're gonna refer back to it? Is it gonna be before that's happening? Is it gonna be the same timeline, right? Are we gonna get
Yeah.
kind of, like, their side of events from their
Mhm.
perspective, which would be really cool, right? Like, to get, like, the Ember and
Yeah.
Randall kinda hanging out,
Well,
becoming besties with Nesta would be really cool.
my theory is that we're gonna get their perspective of going through the caves, because we only got Bryce's
Yeah.
perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like, we only got her side of the story. We don't know what kind of transpired between when she landed, what the group was trying to do, and then when they got there and then they went through the caves together, what Azrael was thinking, what Nesta was thinking,
Yeah.
and then the aftermath of everything that
I
happened.
think
Like,
yes.
and as a reader, I need to know, like, how Azrael handled that. How did he go when he lost Truth Teller? Like, did he actually feel this kind of connection to Bryce? Like, was there really stuff lying for him or not? Like, did he just want to kill her? Or was he kind of like, I'm feeling a real kind of mate's pull here, and I'm really confused because you're an
Yeah.
intergalactic fae who says she has a mate. Why am I feeling anything towards you? Like, how did
Right.
the
Well, and,
guy
like,
feel?
is he, like, freaking out and, like, not himself with Truth Teller gone? Is he I mean, like, because that's sort of like, that is it is so important to him and to his identity.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, you and I have talked about this, before, but I think there's going to be aftermath of
Yeah.
of the power getting taken out of Prithian, and then Truth Teller and Gwydion getting returned. Like, I'm not sure that, like, everything's just hunky dory over in ACOTAR world after
No, no,
everything
not
that's
at
happened.
all. And we didn't see Azrael again throughout the book. I think except for the bonus
No,
chapter between Ember and that we only saw a little bit then. But we didn't see Azrael and Bryce interact again after that
no,
first
no.
instance. And I am really curious about how Az handled that, because I feel like there'll be a massive implosion, and it's
Yeah,
going to be very much centered around that. Like, this guy has had it tough. Let's be honest.
said it
Like,
so
poor Az.
tough.
I feel so sorry for Az at this point in time. He is our ultimate lonely man that needs to find love. Like, has, he loved Moore, who didn't love him back. Then he loves Elaine, who has a mate that she's not really into, but, like, but he likes her.
I mean, she's also just, like, emotionally unavailable. I mean, even if she's not really liking him back.
Yeah, like, Gwyn hasn't even really been explored. There's just kind of, they're training together and maybe there's a little bit of something
Yeah,
there, but nothing. I mean, she's an acolyte. And she's been through a huge trauma. So, and oh God, I'm going to jump into it here. I can't help it. But, like, Azrael has this darkness and he needs someone who can be his equal, who can handle
yeah,
that. I feel like when Az is with Gwyn, she's been so broken and so traumatized. Az is going to be this caring, loving, supportive person. He's
yeah,
not going to explore his own darkness because he's going to
right.
be too worried about protecting her, because that's the kind of guy that he
That's
is.
who he is. He's a
But
protector. Yeah,
he also needs to process his darkness. This is a guy that tortures people. This is a guy that was
yeah,
willing to cut the freaking horn out of Bryce's back.
yeah.
That's
He
dark.
needs someone
Like,
who pushes him, right? I mean,
yeah, yeah.
who
Stands
pushes
up to
him,
him and
who
is not afraid of it.
understands
Mm.
his darkness, who's not afraid of it, and, you know, I did not see the, like, Bryce and Azriel, like, their personalities meshing, but after
No.
reading it in CC3, I was like, "Wow, I really see it. It really
I
makes sense."
know, I know, and
Um,
I got as thrown as anyone. I was not here going, "Oh my god," like, I was like, "Oh my god, they're never gonna work." We literally on here, we were saying as if Az would ever wanna be in Midgard. Like, he would hate it.
yeah.
That's what we said, and we were so wrong. We were so wrong. He would actually love it. We realized he's a total club rat. He actually, like, and actually when I think about it, he's probably actually the most unhappy where he is.
Yeah,
Like,
Right.
everyone else is loved up and everything, and he's just kind of lost in his shadows. He's lonely with his shadows around, and he actually needs something different. Now I actually think about it, he's probably actually the one that would break away more than anyone else.
Than
But look,
anyone. Yeah,
I
I'd be willing to
definitely
live somewhere else.
I love that it seemed like with Bryce, he opened up more than anyone else. Everyone, you cannot deny that in this book, he was more open and talkative than he has ever been. Now, some people are like, oh, maybe he's just gotten more confident. Or maybe there was a particular person that just he couldn't help but talk to, couldn't help but
Yeah,
open up to.
yeah.
Plus, he had
And
Nesta.
yeah, I was gonna say, even if you're not a Brazzers fan, right? Like maybe that's not what's going on. Maybe it is because of this relationship with Nesta, right? Like maybe Nesta as his friend has helped to kind of pull him out. But either way, I'm really excited to see that relationship between
Definitely,
Nesta and Azrael,
definitely.
Azrael
And
in
look,
book 6.
for me, at the end, I just want a happy ending for Az. I want him to find love. I would ideally like him to find a mate's love and a massive epic love.
Yeah,
I just want him to be happy. And,
yeah.
that's gonna make me happy. So that's my biggest priority. Okay. All right. Let's try and jump in. I think we had one final thing was to talk about Bryce and Hunt and the future
Yeah.
of Bryce and Hunt. Um, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts
Yeah,
on
I mean, we talked about this, I think, on a lot on last in the last couple of episodes, really, and how there's a lot of cracks there that we've seen. We weren't very happy with what's just like their relationship, and even though it sort of has this like happily ever after, it's not. It doesn't feel
Mhm.
satisfying, right? I think
Yeah.
even if you are like a fan of Bryce and Hunt, and you're like, yeah, they hadn't have a happy ever after. I do feel like if you ask yourself, like, are you satisfied with that happy ever after? Like,
Yeah.
no, I don't think you are. And so I do think in Crescent City 4, we're probably gonna start to see the aftermath of what has happened and, potentially see these cracks start to get bigger between the two of them. Um,
Mm.
I'm not sure, how much we'll even get their perspectives in CC4. I think it'll be probably like Lidia and Rune and maybe Therian, but there's going to be something there. The other thing, just from like a theorizing perspective, there's a lot of things about Hunt that are still unresolved.
Mhm.
The Oracle told him to stay away from Bryce
Yes.
Quinlan, stay
Yes.
far away from Bryce Quinlan. We don't know what
Didn't
that
really
means.
happen. I mean, it's
Yeah, like
basically
why would the Oracle, who
yeah.
was blinded by Bryce, clearly in touch with like the magic of the universe, be like, stay away from Bryce Quinlan?
Yeah, and, she's his mate. Why would you tell him to stay away from your mate? Like, and if you go, "Oh, maybe it was because he had to go through that horrible torture," you would still be like, "Yeah, but, you're gonna have a lifetime of happiness after
You're
that."
gonna get through it.
So,
Yeah.
theoretically, you should still be like, "Okay, you're gonna go through a little bad period, but she's still gonna be your mate, so you should definitely stick with Bryce." So, I feel like something way bigger is still that just hasn't been resolved. It has not been resolved in my opinion.
No.
Definitely still a huge gap.
And like the Princes of Hell talk a lot about how Hunt was bred to do something, and like we're sort of told that it's like, to be like the counterpart, I guess, to Bryce's magic. But I'm not sure that we've gotten the whole story there.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing I'll say is like they talk up so much that Bryce and Hunt have this like magic that works together, right? And that
Mhm.
Hunt was bred for Bryce and Hunt's magic to work together. And in the end, Bryce didn't use Hunt's magic to defeat the Asteri.
Yeah. No, he
So
just bloody took her magic during lovemaking. That's what he did. He bloody they had this weird sex
yeah,
session, and then he just drew all that power into himself. And he was like, "Oh, I can control the dread trove now, babe. Like, guess
yeah,
what? I can
yeah.
wear your mask. Awesome." Like, I
Yeah,
was like,
and they kinda work together, at least initially, to, you know, beat down the the source of the power, to
mhm.
take it down, but in the end, Bryce is the one that goes by herself to defeat them. So if Hunt was, like, theoretically bred to help defeat the Asteri and to be the partner of the Starborn Fae, he didn't actually do that. So, does that mean that there's something else he was bred for? I think so.
Yeah. Yes. Geez, I have huge theories on this,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he was bred for the Starborn. but like, was it just to defeat the Steri, or was it more to maybe take her power and to have
And
control of her
Siphonette,
power? That would
really
be very
interesting.
useful, wouldn't it? And
It would be
okay,
very
there's a lot of theories,
useful.
even into literally the smell and the similar smell that Hunt has to as that they apparently their
Yeah,
sense. I will have to go look them up, but like one's like mist and cedar, and the other ones I don't know. They're very similar anyway. But there's a big scene. I don't think I've spoken about this yet. The scene that I really think is possibly going into Orion theory and possibly the future for Hunt and Bryce is when he is angry at Celestina. So we
yeah,
see like there's a few issues, like they're having fights and arguments and stuff, and they're just not on the same page when Bryce comes back. Like, I mean, I totally get it. Like, Hunt's just been tortured. He's kind of not coping, and Bryce seems really tough. She's just like, no, get it together. Like, we've got to go fight these Asteri. Like, I'm in fight mode. And you need to get together and stand here beside me. But it was very bizarre. But in this scene, so when he sees Celestina, he goes full Umbra Mortis mode. He gets really angry and he just wants to kill her. And Bryce is there trying to like calm him down. Like being like, calm down, babe. We want her on our side. Like I know she's done some bad stuff, but she's
we
really
got
sorry.
bigger, more important things to do.
Yeah,
My
we
work.
actually really need her. And he finally starts to calm down. And Bryce takes his hand and he's got the lightning kind of going in his hand. And he quickly pulls his lightning to him and he says the line, I would never hurt Bryce. I would never hurt Bryce. And this comes into my theory of the never say never, right? Quite a few
Yeah,
times there was all this like, oh, I'd never do this. I would never do that. And I'm like, oh, never say never. I feel like as soon as you say never, it's going to be the opposite. And that was a little bit what I felt here. I thought, oh, are we seeing a bit of a potential that might actually be, and you can talk about Orion theory because that's been a huge theory you've had, but that there might be this reason, is there the possibility that Hunt may in the future go in full Umbra Mortis mode
yeah,
and may
yeah,
hurt Bryce, similar to the way the Autumn King hurt Ember, and then would that be a massive deal breaker for Bryce in the
yeah,
relationship?
yeah. I don't know. I think so. And I mean, I'm probably going to dive into the Orion stuff in future episodes, but just generally in some versions of the Orion mythology, he he does do something to Athena that maybe puts her in danger and causes her to have to kill him.
Mhm.
So there's definitely something there. I just like, I don't think that we're done with the connections to Orion. I don't think that SJM would name him Orion, especially as like this name that he doesn't even go by, right? She could have just called him Hunt and been done with it. She didn't have to say he's Orion.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
if there wasn't going to be more pulling into that. But I also think that that connects to the other Brasriel theory. So I'm gonna hold I'm gonna have
You're gonna hold that there. We're
I'm
gonna
gonna
hold
hold
the
that
top that
in.
there. We can talk about
More
that
to
another
come.
time. But
Any other like Massverse theories or thoughts that you have this week?
yeah, look, I mean, I think we've gone over it. We've gone over the Princes of Hell. We've gone over, a few of those cracks showing between Bryce and Hunt that I think
Yep.
didn't leave us with that happy ending. I mean, even people have spoken about that. I thought because I was a bit Brasriel, I wasn't very into the spice scenes in this book, right? I found them, I literally flicked the first time. I was actually kind of grossed out. I was like, I'm so not into this. Rune and Lidia, on the other hand, I could have had 3 scenes on them. I would have loved
Yeah.
it. But for some reason, the Bryce and Hunt scenes weren't doing it for me. It just kind of happened. Like, I don't know. It just
Yeah.
wasn't floating my boat, which is very rare. Normally, I'd be all up for it, but it wasn't into it. There was definitely some weirdness going on there. And look, whatever happens, whether it's got anything to do with the Bryce as theory or if it's got completely to do with something different, it was a happy ending, but it wasn't a happy ending. And I hope we're actually not having to wait till the 4th Crescent City book to get some of these answers because I don't want to wait 10 years for these answers, guys. Like, I feel
I
like we've
know.
got at least 2 books before the next Crescent City comes out. So I'm hoping that there's still going to be some crossover in ACOTAR and we're going to get some more answers to this in the
Some more
very near
Massverse
future
answers.
because
Yeah.
I do not want to be 75 when I finally get these answers.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, because that would mean SJM is like 80. So
Yeah, that's right. No,
writing, spicy scenes between like 30-year-olds. 25,
Yeah.
20-year-olds.
Slightly creepy, slightly creepy.
Slightly weird.
Yeah, but no, and look, I just say we've talked about the Princes of Hell. We've talked about, I think, all that information we got from Celine and Helene and the above and below. I think there's still a lot more there.
There's a lot more
Um,
there. Yeah.
there's heaps of Easter eggs. This was actually
Well, and the other thing that's interesting to me is, the High Fae, the Prithian Fae in Midgard didn't ever really breed or kind of cross with the Shifter Fae from the Throne of Glass world. And we now have like potentially two prominent couples that are going to be bridging those gaps. You've got Rune and Lidia, right? Rune's from the High Fae, Prithian Fae, Lydia's Shifter Fae. But then you've also got Therian and I can't remember her name right now. It's escaping me, but his wife, Therian's wife.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
High Fae, Shifter Fae. So there could be some interesting implications as well with like the Massverse and what happens, with their magic and like with their like mating when these two kind of like paths of the Fae come back together potentially.
Yeah.
So
Yes, because we haven't even, I mean, in Crescent City, like, there was, like, at the beginning, Bryce is hooking up with, like, a lion fae, tiger fae, like, when she's out
yeah,
clubbing, but we don't know about anyone breeding officially, like, but
right.
obviously it could potentially happen. I mean, hell, Bryce was going to hook up with, like, the wolves, like, she
Yeah,
was totally into Connor,
yeah.
like, that would have been crossing over, so it was obviously quite common, and I don't know what that kinda, I don't know, but we didn't see any of sort of the offspring of what both offspring, I think the high fae, like, from the ACOTAR world, generally, they didn't mix
They
much.
didn't mix.
Like,
Exactly,
Bryce was
exactly.
the rarity and Rune, I don't think we saw many of the others mix, whereas the fae from Throne of
When
Glass world were all kind of free reign, they were kinda doing
right,
whatever.
but they're all theoretically like, they all are from the same kind of even though they shift into different things, they're still the same type of Fae. This is a different,
Yeah,
so,
it's
yeah,
very
it's, like, really
interesting.
interesting what could
Super
happen.
interesting.
So,
Yes.
all right,
That was
I think
nice.
that's it for this week. This is all the time we have. We say, like, all the time we have when we've recorded an hour and 20 minutes. We have a lot of time here. Um, but thank you so much, as always, for listening. Starting like soon we're going to dive into those Brasriel theories, which is just going to explode and blow your mind, so stay tuned, and we really hope that you enjoy.
Yeah,
Thanks.
awesome, guys. Thanks, have a great week. Bye.
Bye.